and then put them up.
Exactly.
And then now they're taking them down. Most of them,
shouldn't.
Right? You said they shouldn't. Why?
Well, it's in honor of American soldiers. Those were American soldiers.
So we should have some northern statues too. I'm sure we do, right?
Oh yeah, of course. There should be honor on both sides.
Yeah.
And how people should view the South, I mean, regardless of what history is saying right now.
Well, that's the cool thing about Hell on Wheels. They show the perspective of a Southern soldier. He just did it. They didn't do it for the reason that a lot of those soldiers didn't do it for the reason that the textbooks say that they did it for.
Yeah, in a way, the book. I mean, at the end of the day, slavery is slavery. It doesn't matter how you view it, how you word it, how anything. This problem with slavery should have never happened to begin with.
Right.
It should have never even been a fucking idea
right.
at all. But the South knew that, well, we were in it, and, well, if we're not treating it... In some of the books that he's saying, and some of the history books that he's written, he's writing about, and what he's explaining to me about, is... And I wish I had the book to explain it. Maybe next episode I'll tell you the author of the book, or I'll write it in the description, because I can't even remember. But this author basically was trying to word it as they wanted to free these slaves, but they couldn't free these slaves because there wasn't enough money in the reserve, as in their bank, to pay for everybody. Not reparations, but to be able to make sure they're good.
Mm-hmm.
So what they were kind of asking a lot of the slave owners was, hey, pay them a little bit, treat them better until we get enough revenue to where we can kind of do this. Not just say, you're all free, but you have no jobs and you have no housing, and
good luck.
Basically saying, yeah, good fucking luck. They kind of knew, like, okay, we need to keep it this way until we can kind of figure this shit out.
Okay.
A lot of what he's saying was that the story, a lot of what Mark Twain said about the South, and a lot of these Southern writers that quote unquote lived in the South during the war really didn't live in the South during the war. They actually moved to Connecticut, Massachusetts, and a lot of the northern states, and then came back around 1878, 1879.
Well, after the war or some shit?
Mm-hmm. And after a lot of the post-war shit that was going on, there was a lot of violence after the war. Not against black people or whatever, but a lot of rebels didn't want to give up.
Yeah.
Because they knew what was up.
Yeah. So why, okay, so can you say in layman terms why this war was fought?
When people say that it's not about states' rights, it was about slavery. No, it was about states' rights. It was about the rights to do, not as you please and what you wanted to do, but at this time, the North kind of wanted to take over the South and take over a lot of what they were wanting, which was they wanted a Federal Reserve. The South saw past that shit and they were like, we don't want that.
That seems like that echoes throughout the world, because I saw a little post that said that Iran's one of the last places that doesn't have a Rothschild.
And another thing that was going on was the Industrial Revolution that was going on as well. And the North and the South wasn't willing to do that. It would industrialize, but it wasn't willing to do all what they were doing, urbanize. They liked the way... The Southern way of life was very loved by a lot of people.
Still is.
I mean...
hospitality, baby.
I'm not gonna lie to you, there are probably a few slave owners that were pieces of shit and did treat their slaves like they were pieces of shit.
For sure. But
you also have to understand that just how there's a 1% now, there was also probably a fucking 1% at that time as well.
There's probably always been.
A lot of plantations at this time in the South, I mean, you have to understand, a lot of them had maybe 1 to 5 slaves, if that, to tend to their crops. A lot of them had to tend with them. So a lot of them treated, and I'm not condoning slavery, but a lot of them probably either paid them for their freedom or treated them right. Gave them a place to live, let them do what they wanted, and fed them. Gave them a way of life in a way. Of course, they bought them, but maybe they saved them from being treated even worse to certain even households that were pieces of shit,
Right.
Again, I'm not condoning slavery, and, I could be completely wrong, and I'll eat my words completely, but that's the touchy subject about it, and that's what sucks about this.
Yeah, but that's what makes it interesting.
But
and that's why it's cool to be that we should be able to talk about it and theorize and debate. And nobody should get like.
But the South, from what he's saying, really did have a plan to free these slaves, to free everybody, but they wanted to make sure that when they did it, there wasn't going to be this housing crisis or this problem that insisted on when after the war happened, when everybody was back in a unified America, that they kind of just, all right, well, everybody's free now, but not really until maybe like when the 13th Amendment was passed, and then you had to have the 14th and 15th Amendment fucking passed, not even, 10, 15 years later. My question with that is, why did we have to pass the 4th and 15th Amendments in the first place?
What's the 14th?
It basically gave them the right to vote and the right to do other shit too. And I think the 15th Amendment gave them the right to, look it up. But I think it said it had a right to...
Well, when they freed the slaves, they also said unless you're a prisoner. And that's why prison labor is a thing right now in America.
It could have been.
No, I'm pretty sure, bro, in the 13th, it said, let's see. That's how good Americans we are. We don't know all of our amendments.
That's a bad thing.
I know. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are collectively known as the Civil War Amendments, designed to ensure equality for recently emancipated slaves.
What were the years that they were ratified?
I don't know, but let me read this. The 13th Amendment banned slavery and all involuntary solitude, except in the case of punishment for crime. So slavery is illegal except for criminals, which can legally be slaves, technically. What was your question?
Now go with the 14th Amendment and 15th.
Okay, let's see. 14th.
And then we'll look at when they were ratified.
The 14th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified on July 9th, 1868, and granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, which included former slaves recently freed. June 13th, 1866, the House of Representatives passed the 14th Amendment by a vote of 120 to 32. And then the 15th, let's see. I wonder if they had to teach us this in high school, right?
They probably did. We probably didn't pay attention.
We're all looking at girls' booties. Trying to get them cooties. The 15th Amendment granting African American men the right to vote was adopted into the U.S. Constitution in 1870. Despite the amendment, by the late 1870s, discriminatory practices were used to prevent blacks from exercising their right to vote, especially in the South. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that the legal barriers were outlawed at the state and local levels if they denied African Americans their right to vote under the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged to the United States by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude." But then right after they did that, it was Reconstruction. And then they had like the black codes, right? Or it was like the Jim Crow or some shit like that. And I learned all about that last semester, man. I'm pretty bad about. It's hard because when you're going to school, you're trying to memorize all this motherfucking information. But
yeah.
Still a little bit less than that.
To sum up what that book really was, it wasn't to really condone how the war went, who what. I mean, both sides it was just bad either way.
War is not a great thing.
The one thing I will say about it is look up the trial to Jefferson Davis. And when you look up this trial, and I even looked it up, and it was fucking nuts, was that for the leader of the Confederacy, he should have gone to jail for what they apparently, if there were war crimes that they said happened,
right,
and they had, done what they did, that they said that this war was illegal, that the South should have never rebelled, and they had no right to secede, and this and that. Jefferson Davis should have gone to jail for treason and causing the uprising.
He didn't.
He never did. And here's the crazy thing. When he was arrested, he wanted to be arrested. And when he went to jail, he wanted to go to trial. He was like, no, I want this to go to trial, and I want to represent myself.
Okay.
Because he knew within the statutes of the Constitution of what he did was not illegal. In fact, what the South did was within the 10th Amendment, which is states' rights. The states have the right to govern themselves.
Interesting.
So
what happened to him?